Hi, Tony from all the remote things here again, and I've got my great friend Alex Sloley. And having Alex on is very interesting because have you ever thought about asking the question, what's the benefit of being part of an agile community? What's a lean coffee? What's an Alex Sloley? Well, you're going to find about all those things today. So just remember, if you're enjoying this today, like, subscribe, join our remote AF community, remoteaf.co. How are you, Alex?
It's great to be here with you, Tony. It's nice to see you after so long, pandemic and all that.
Yeah, so Alex and I are great friends. We've known each other for quite some time. We were just discussing the fact that the last time we saw each other was probably at a conference called Last, ironically, and it was probably in Canberra, and it was what we call BC before COVID. So it's been
Yeah.
some time since we've seen each other in the flesh, so to speak. Uh, Alex, just for everybody, I know you well, obviously, but please introduce yourself.
Well, my name's Alex Sloley, he, him, and I'm an Agile coach, and I'm headquartered in Sydney, Australia. And I'm really passionate about the Agile community, and I do a bunch of stuff in the Agile community. And me and my whole family, that's like our vibe. We're all Agilists. My wife is an Agile coach. Both my kids are certified Scrum Masters, and we all use like Kanban at home and stuff like that. And this is my passion, and that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, and that's why I got you on today as well. So you've taken your passion and you've
Mm.
turned it into a book, which is always a good thing. I'm always in awe of anybody that's been able to write a book because I haven't. Uh, I'd like to hear a little bit about it. So the book, for example, is called Community. So firstly, where did it come from, and what was that emphasis to get you to actually get that stuff and put it down on paper?
You know, I'd go to conferences and I'd hang out with, my friends and my people at meetups and stuff like that. And they would always ask me, Alex, when's your book coming out? And I'd be like, uh, hopefully never, because I don't really want to write a book. And after a while, it was like, all my friends have written books, and I'm like the only person that hasn't. So I was like, I gotta write a book. And then I went through the whole process of writing a book, which was a new thing for me. I mean, I'd never written a book before, and I discovered something profound. Uh, I don't like writing books. Writing books is hard work, and it kind of sucks for me. I have met people who love writing books, and I'm like, wow, there's something wrong with those people because writing books is terrible.
As one of those people who's trying to write one myself at the
Mm,
moment, I completely concur with you. And as I said, I'm in awe with anyone that's written one or anybody who's
yeah,
written multiple of them. You just go, oh, how did you do this?
yeah, exactly. So, it was a labor of love in that although I didn't particularly like the working aspect of it, what I did love was the my own journey as I wrote it, because I actually learned stuff about myself and got to reflect about myself as I wrote the book and had learnings. So it wasn't just like a static thing where I was like, here's what I'm going to do and I'm going to deliver it. It wasn't like I wrote a functional spec and then delivered it at the end. It was basically emergent and adaptive as I went along. And then I created the book and I was like, fantastic, awesome. I've just given birth to a book. And then I did something really, really dumb. I started writing a second book.
Right. Okay. So we've got a second one coming, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's still in process, right?
Do we have a title?
It's still a work in process, but it's about creating coaching programs. So the first one is about the Agile community, and the second one's about coaching programs. And you hear this age-old adage about like you write what you know, and for me, that was definitely true.
Hmm. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. We'll touch on that a little bit as we go, because for those of you who don't know, and he won't beat his own drum, but Alex is really a coach's coach, and we'll talk about his passion for coaching. But let's talk a little bit more about the book, The Agile Community. Talk to me about what it's actually about, the themes that are in there that people can use.
It's it's essentially my journey of how I discovered and got engaged with the Agile community. And I even have to define what the Agile community means in the
Mm.
book. Essentially, it's just a group of people like you, Tony, and me, and all the friends that you and I both have. Like when we go to conferences and we hang out and we drink a beer at the pub and we talk about Agile stuff, it's all those people. And it's constantly changing and morphing and growing because new people enter, people retire and leave, and they change where they live and they change, their roles. But ultimately, it was about my own personal journey. And I was like, well, okay, I've learned all this stuff, and it took me a pretty long time. It didn't happen overnight for me. Maybe I should just write a book and it could help other people like make their journey a little more easy. I guess it's like Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales, it's like it's got moral messages and maybe it'll make your acclamation or entry or realizing the benefits yourself in the Agile community just a little bit smoother. And that was what my goal was.
So when I read it, one of the interesting things for me was,
Mm,
and you said it was about your journey,
yeah,
and you really have talked about the journey of being part of the community, how you can contribute, and all the different facets of the types of ways, and et cetera, and et cetera. But
yeah.
one of the ones I really wanted to dig into, just to give people a bit of a taster of it, is you talk a lot about the benefits of being part of the Agile community, and you talked a little bit about one of those, which is beer and chatting over a beer.
Yeah, right.
Which we both don't mind. But there are other, really great benefits of being part of the Agile community. Talk to me a little bit about that, Alex.
There's a variety of ways it can benefit you as an individual, and they range from deeply personal, satisfying type things to like business corporate type stuff. Um, and you can go across the spectrum. You don't have to have just one reason. You might have many reasons. So one reason is maybe you're passionate about continually learning. Well, getting engaged with the Agile community is a great way to continually learn because you go to conferences and meetups and you learn new stuff and you go to sessions and workshops. But on top of that, you just talk to people and experience their experiences through their words. So if you're in continual learning, I mean, really, it's a cheap way to do it and it's super effective. But maybe you're trying to grow your Agile consultancy business, right? And then it becomes like, how do I develop my brand and how do I sponsor events and get my name out there? And at the most intrinsic level, it's like, how can I help other people? If you feel satisfied and get that satisfaction, fulfillment from helping other people, that's an awesome way to do it. Like you volunteer on volunteer teams and help lead events and all that kind of stuff. So I guess ultimately what it comes down to is that there are so many benefits, it really comes down to which of these benefits do you resonate with because there's so many. Like you can't just pick one or there's not just a few to pick from. There's like a smorgasbord of benefits to pick from. You just got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things about our community that struck me when I was when I was reading it, and I hadn't stopped to think about it. Like we've been doing this a long time. You and I have been around coaching things a long time. But if I think of it, when we first started doing this back in the 90s, um, you know, early 2000s, there was some agile conferences, right? Like, you'd have the beginning was Agile Australia, and maybe there was a bit of a meetup, and they were all in physical. But now there are so many ways to engage the virtual conferences. There's, open space. There's, uh, all these different ways, and particularly now, with COVID and pandemic opening up the online world as well. I know it's an old saying, but the world is your oyster. There are so many ways to communicate with this community, and it amazes me. And that was one of the things I got from it that was quite startling to sit back and think about that. What do you think about that evolution? It's really has changed, hasn't it?
Pandemic has been terrible in some ways and beautiful in others. It's an extreme, a contrast, right? I mean, I run Lean Beer in Sydney, and prior to pandemic, it was always face to face. At Lean Beer, we did it every other Monday at a pub, and we rotated the pubs around Sydney, and it was a fantastic time. And then pandemic hit, and it transitioned fully to Zoom, and now we're kind of like in this hybrid zone where sometimes it's physical and sometimes it's Zoomy. But during the pandemic, when it was Zoomy, I mean, we would just have people from all over the world, totally random people, come into our sessions. We'd have sessions where the people who came to Lean Beer didn't even know what it was. They just thought it sounded cool, and then they came and attended, and then they were like, "Whoa, this is tripping me out, but it's actually pretty fun." And I think that's a fantastic way. We have regulars from all over the world in our sessions, and from that perspective, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think upon that journey and think, I ended up being in meetups with some of our great friends like Sathal Singh and Scott in Scotland, and
Right.
you and I spoke at a conference in Minsk. You know, uh, all those different ways that we started to interact, and
Mm.
and now that's there. Uh, it's a good segue into talking about it. You said you do lean beer. I don't know about the lean bit. How do you get lean when you're drinking beer? But we'll move on from that. But that's not all. You do lean coffee.
Yeah.
Um, you're involved in those communities, but you're also involved in a number of other communities. I guess you've got
Yeah.
the coaching retreat that you're involved in. You've been involved in the coaching advisory teams of it. The one that really I wanted to dig into a little bit
Mm.
was you've been involved in a group, which is a community in a sense, which is spreading to the community and part of the community, which is really about the Agile Ethics Initiative. And we had Shane on early on when this was starting. So talk to me a little bit about that and how that's evolved now.
Well, agile ethics is something that's been around some time. It's not like a new thing. There are people in the community who've been bringing up this topic for years. And what happened is eventually a group of people got like a groundswell, a mass, and we got together and we said, you know what, let's make it an official Agile Alliance initiative team, which means you're under the Agile Alliance initiative umbrella. So that means you get access to like their website and you can put up pages and you have chairs and groups of people, and the Agile Alliance helps you run it and support it and stuff like that. The reason it came about is because I think, and we've had this conversation in the team itself, is that eventually over time, when a profession becomes like big enough and important enough and enough maturity, inevitably they're going to come across the ethics thing, right? So when you talk about ethics in the professional communities, people think of like lawyers and doctors and accountants and stuff like that. Like when they get their final diploma that they hang on the wall, they like say an oath and they sign something in blood and they have to obey their ethical code, whatever it may be. The reason that those professions have that ethical code is because they've been around a long time and they've figured out as a community over a long time, hey, we need to abide by this code and able to make the profession the best it can be. And I think we're getting to the point where the Agile community, and especially the Agile coaching community, is at the point where we have like enough people and enough importance in the world and the big scheme of things where we're kind of developing the same thing. Some you might call it professionalism, but I don't know if that's the perfect term for it.
I like the word professionalism, and I just talked about before saying you were coach. And the reason I said that was because professionalism in coaching is something that needs to be a part of our world now. It's easy to go and get a certificate and say I'm a coach,
Yeah.
but the infinitesimal damage that you can do if you don't really know what you're doing, or you haven't been doing this for some time. And yes, you have to get the stripes from some injuries along the way. We all know that's part of coaching.
Mm.
But there's so much help out there in terms of professionalism. So firstly, ethics that plays into it, but also, I know you're very passionate about coaching as an actual career. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I really just kind of stumbled into coaching. It was many years ago, and I was kind of getting tired of the thing I was doing. And I stumbled into a role called the Scrum Master role. This was like before like Agile Coach was like a title, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, suddenly I felt my purpose in life, my satisfaction, like I was doing good. I was just helping teams create software. I mean, this is like the old days, right? Traditional Scrum software teams. But I was like, this is fantastic. Um, and that's kind of how I got into coaching. And I think most of the old timey Agile coaches started in a very similar space too. They were probably a scrum master on a software development team. And I think that's changed gradually over the years. Like now I meet Agile coaches that come from different walks of life.
Mm.
Sometimes I'll meet Agile coaches that came from professional life coaching. And these aren't the only coaches I hang out within the community. Like over the years, I've gotten to know and become friends with like coaches who specialize in drug addiction or
Yeah.
like family therapy or sports coaching. And I'm seeing this like coaching thing kind of spread out across our world as we know it. But of course, since I'm an agile coach, that's where my focus is personally.
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about the agile coaching thing because I think it's interesting. You talked about life coaching, and I'm not saying it's bad for these different coaches who are coming from different places, right? But what I do see and what I have seen, one of the best hints that was ever given to me was actually go and do your life coaching. And I sort of said, well, I'm not really interested in that gig, in exactly what you just said, right? Agile's where I'm sort of focused. But the hint that was given me is you really need to understand when you need to stop coaching and step away from it and say that's not your gig. Because what happens is people try to jump into those and you create this you can create lots of different damage, organizational, personal damage. Um, and so I think that that's the first thing. And then the second thing for me was really understanding coaching in its essence and how you can reach people. And I think, Lisa Adkins and Michael Spade, I was very lucky to have done um, coaching with them. And that hit home to me how you have to be very, very understanding of what you can actually do in this role. Your thoughts on that?
I remember having a conversation with my eldest child some years ago, and we were talking about something. I don't remember what. And then at some point in the conversation, they looked at me and they said, "Dad, stop coaching me," which which I thought was hilarious, right? Because they like knew my tricks. I guess at that point, I'd been doing so much coaching and coaching for so long, it's kind of like the way I act now, I suppose, to a certain extent. But in the beginning, when I was transitioning from that scrum master type person into an agile coach person, what you said resonated with me because I kind of had to learn those similar lessons myself. And I
Mm.
can look back now on my journey and I can say, I think these are the ways I've developed as a coach and as a person. I've become more patient, hopefully. I hopefully listen more and ask more questions. And to a certain extent, I think even in the other types of coaching, which I said were like sports coaching and therapy coaching and drug coaching and all that kind of stuff. I think we all kind of gravitate towards that central coaching theme. And then we have our domain expertise from perhaps where we grew up or something like that. And by grew up, like where we first entered the corporate world or whatever.
And
So
I think it's really important, Alex, because the other thing for me is that with Agile, we have such a great community, but it's a very diverse community. And so again, not harping on the old bit, but when we first started, you had Scrum and XP and
yeah,
Kanban and those things, and there was the brand wars, right? But
yeah.
we've got over that sort of thing. Hopefully, there's still a little bit happens here and there, certain scaling things, but we won't go there. But there's so many other things that the community has embraced and brought into it, like clean language,
Mm,
um, you know, psychological safety,
mm,
intent-based leadership. So
mm.
as a coach now, you have to understand those tools and how you can bring those into the group. So my question to you is, if I was a young coach and I was asking you for the top three things that you would tell me to take on board and do, what would they be?
Well, my top three might change on a day to day based on what I experienced that day. uh, I think I've hit on a couple of them because I think they're persistent themes across coaching. And the first one is develop your patience. And that has a lot of nuance in it because patience doesn't mean not just getting mad. Patience means like waiting to speak, not saying advice that you're not asked for and shouldn't give in the first place. Patience means a lot of that kind of stuff you're talking about. The second thing is that people are people and people say and do crazy stuff, including you, and you just need to accept that and work with it, right? And that means, yeah, sometimes you might get angry or they might get angry or sad or whatever. People have feelings, and you gotta understand that, and you can't force stuff on people. This is where you start to talk about like agility and agile coaching is like, is this something you impose on them, or is this something that's more human and that you should help them with rather than enforce on them? So I think those are my number one and number two today. And then number three today would probably be always try to, maybe I shouldn't use the word always because that's not a coachy word. Um, Try to keep an open mind yourself. Um, how many times have I seen agile coaches kind of get stuck in a rut themselves? And every now and then I can, you know, have an out of body experience and go up into the sky and look down on myself and be like, wow, you're getting a little curmudgeon-y there, Alex, perhaps. Right? Remember, you're supposed to keep an open mind. And that's key to being a great coach, I think, is not just awareness of the stuff around you, but your awareness of yourself.
Yeah, I like those. And just for those that are watching, I put Alex on the spot then because we sort of roughly discussed how we're going to talk about these things, obviously, but
Yeah.
it just came to me. I was going to pick him for that. You did well. And I think one I would add to that, just adding my 2 cents worth in, is don't focus completely on the mechanistic things. There's a whole piece of humanistic that makes those mechanistic things work, right? So process and all those things that we know that work in agile aren't worth a toss unless you can get the human quotient into them and the human quotient involved in it, right? And so don't ever forget the human being in the radar, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about the different types of coaches, and I think that's the thing that unites all those different types of coaches. Even though one's in sports and one's in drugs and one's in agile, we all have humans at the center of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, the great stuff, and thank you for indulging me with the top three questions.
Yeah.
I'll move a bit further. You're also a conference speaker, and I'm really interested in it because I saw the title of your talk
Mm.
for Agile on the Beach in New Zealand. And unfortunately, I can't be there, but I thought it'd be great to give people a taster of it before you do. Do you want to let them know what the title was?
It's Agile Cheer, bring it on.
So talk to.
Or there's another one too.
Well, yeah, there is another one. I saw that one.
Well, yeah, so that's ZFG. but 0 F's given. I don't know. I don't know which one you meant. So
Well, the 0 F's given was the one that caught my interest. It did stand out, but
okay.
I did see the other one. So let's just talk about the 0 F's given. Talk to me
Hmm.
about that one.
Uh, so many things are challenging for agile coaches. Like just being an agile coach on a day-to-day basis is quite challenging because you're dealing with stuff that's hard to do, like help cultures be better. And depending on where you are, that could be a challenge just through inertia or whatever reason. But ultimately, I think one of the critical skills that all agile coaches need is ZFG. And that's basically where you are courageous. So if I had to map it to like one of the Scrum, values, it'd be courage. Because ZFG means that you as a coach abstract yourself away from the emotion or the bias or the politics or the money in the situation, and you try to be truly objective. So, for example, in ZFG, you don't think about, if I say the wrong thing to the client, am I not going to get my contract extended, right? I need to say what needs to be said because it's truth to power and it's objective and it just needs to be said. Um, ZFG is very hard to achieve. Probably the most significant, or at least in my opinion, the most significant part of the presentation is the fact that everyone experiences fear, and that when you experience really bad fear in your workplace, all kinds of crazy stuff can happen.
Yeah.
You can actually do things that are unethical or immoral simply because you are fearful. But if you can somehow manage and let the fear wash through you, this is like a Dune reference, right? Then you're in a much better position as a natural coach.
It's an interesting thought because it goes to something that I often say to
Mm.
people is, and it's a John Lennon quote, and it's everything will work out in the end, and if it doesn't, that's okay as well.
What
And
song is that from? Or is it from a song or
no, it's just an actual statement that he made once.
yeah, John Lennon was a genius for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, and that particular statement has always resonated with me because and I say that to my kids, look, it'll work out in the end, and if it doesn't, well, that's okay. We'll work out something else, right? And I think that is exactly what you're saying. Is it's so easy just to get paralyzed by
Mm.
these things that when you're a coach, you have extrinsic and intrinsic forces coming at you,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and you have to understand how to deal with those. And quite often you're mediating those and helping them actually balance out now. And I understand exactly where you're coming from. So I'm really looking forward to it. I hope they record that one. If not, we might have to do something about getting you back on here and having a station about it. But you got a second one as well, bringing the cheers on. Talk to me about that one.
Well,
Do I need to do this a bit of woo, woo,
yeah, I think so. You need to do the actual cheer. One of the things I love to do is co-create conference workshops and presentations with other people.
Mm.
And I'm proud to say that in some years, I've helped probably 15 or 20 people develop presentations or workshops and get into conferences themselves internationally. Like, I find that to be very fulfilling. And in some cases, I actually co do the workshops and present with some of the people. And in this particular instance, my co-presenter facilitator is Rosalind Martin. And Rosalind and I, it's the typical story. We were sitting together at work and we just started to have interesting conversations. And then I found out she was like a professional ballerina. She'd gotten trained and like could teach ballet. And then I found out she was like a professional cheerleader for the NRL, the National Rugby League, and other sports teams in Australia. And I was like, whoa, And then one day she came into work and she told me that she'd done like a dance activity in one of her workshops at work. And then I was like, oh yeah, we got to do this. And magic happens. And now we've got an ex-professional cheerleader and an ex not professional cheerleader. That's me.
Yeah, right.
And we reframe it like, hey, here's something cool and interesting you can do in the Agile community. One of my biggest things is, for me personally, is to try to be as creative as I possibly can in the Agile domain. For me, that's how I exercise my creative outlet, right?
I really admire that you do that. And one of the things we've crisscrossed over the years in conferences, but Alex, we've never done anything together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's totally, yeah,
And I
that's
think we're
totally
gonna
right.
have, I think we're gonna have to remedy that.
I just like creative stuff. Like I've got all these crazy ideas, and I was just talking to a friend today. Hey, you should do a silent presentation where you just sketch. I did
Yeah.
a silent presentation many years ago, but I think anything that stretches the boundaries is good.
Yeah, I like those ones. So there was one I saw. I've always wanted to have a go at it, but the courage thing, and absolutely no slides, nothing.
Yeah,
Can
fantastic.
captivate the audience, right? And that would be an interesting thing for me to try. Now, it goes one way, two ways, doesn't it? So you have to be prepared.
It'll
But
be fine in the end, right?
that's it. So I think live on air, we'll have to collaborate on something together because I think that's an opportunity I can't let go after talking to you. Look, we're really close to the end, Alex. It has been an absolute ball.
Oh,
And I do mean it's been a pleasure talking to you.
yeah.
How can people get involved with any of the things that you've talked about today, or how can they touch base with you?
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy to engage the community. I have to say that in my experience, the Agile community is welcoming of anyone. Pretty much, you just got to reach out to a few people, and they'll be more than happy to help you engage with the community. Um, that includes just about every major org I can think of, right? And the list just goes on and on and on, scrum.org, Scrum Alliance, IC Agile, take your pick. There's so many of them. And I think probably one of the easiest ways is to reach out to someone you hear about that's super passionate in the Agile community, and they can help you engage as much as your heart wants you to. So it might be you, Tony, for example, or it might be me, or you mentioned Shane earlier and Craig. All those people are really engaged with the Agile community. And all you got to do is go on LinkedIn, look them up, and basically ping them, and they'll be thrilled to help you. Now, for me, it's Alex at alexsloley.com. And I actually respond to LinkedIn stuff and emails, so I'm happy to help. Uh, there's more opportunity out there than there are people able to do all that stuff. So come on, welcome aboard. Come on.
Come
We
on,
can,
join us.
yeah, exactly.
You know you want to. Before we go, I know you've got a copy of the book on your desk. Hold it up so people can see it. Here's one we prepared earlier. It's a beautiful bright orange cover. You can't miss it. Make sure you have a read of the Agile Community because, as I said, it is one of those books when you read through it, you just go, that's a great breath of fresh air. And I do mean that. Look, it's been fantastic having you on all the remote things. You're listening to this. Don't forget, as I said before, like, subscribe so we keep this thing going. Join us at the Remote AF community. You can go to remoteaf.co, click the community button. There's hundreds of people there talking remote, talking agility. How do we make all this work? It's been fantastic to have you on today, Mr. Slowly, on all the remote things.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.